There ought to have been peace and quiet backstage, away from all the mayhem. However, Stevie Nicks experienced anything but tranquility. Either the performance or the audience weren't the problem. Someone called Lindsey Buckingham. Everything they had gone through, the love, the quiet, the tension, should have prepared her for nothing. Lindsey, however, did something that Stevie did not anticipate. She crossed a line in front of their longtime friends and family. Tears welled up in the eyes of the survivor of the scandals, heartbreaks, and mayhem that was Fleetwood Mac's. After all this time, what did Lindsey do to break Stevie Nicks' heart? Let's go back in time a little. What led Stevie Nicks to discover her singing voice? Stephanie Lynn Nicks, better known as Stevie Nicks, came into this world in Phoenix, Arizona, at Good Samaritan Hospital. No one could have predicted that Jess and Barbara Nicks' kid would become a rock icon. German, English, Welsh, and Irish were all parts of Stevie's family tree. Her whole being was music. At the tender age of 4, her grandpa, Aaron Jess A.J. Nicks Sr., began to have a profound impact on her life by instructing her in the art of duet singing. She stayed close to home as her mother read her fairy stories to feed her imagination. Stevie got her nickname because, when she was a little girl, she kept pronouncing Stephanie as TD instead. Indeed, Stevie. She fell head over heels for groups like the Vandellas, Martha Reeves, and the Shirelles while growing up on Top 40 R&B. I listened to a lot of Top 40 R&B radio, she said once. Martha Reeves, the Vandellas, and the Shirelles were all groups that I adored, such as Walking in the Sand, Near the Shangri-La, and Remember. In the 5th grade, my grandpa went out and got me a whole truckload of records. At least 150 of them were single. Her family lived in several locations, including San Francisco, El Paso, Phoenix, and Salt Lake City, due to her dad's job at Greyhound. She wrote her first song on a Goya guitar that she received for her 16th birthday. After loving and losing someone, I feel sad but not blue. She seemed to have her own small musical universe where she could lose herself in albums. In her freshman year of high school in California, she was a member of the band Changing Times. Following her transition to Menlo Atherton High School, she crossed paths with Lindsey Buckingham. At a Young Life club, she felt he was playing California Dreamin' and harmonized their singing. I thought he was adorable, she remarked. As a member of Fritz, Lindsey approached Stevie in 1967 and inquired if she would like to join the band. Fritz inspired Stevie's intense live performances by playing for legendary musicians like Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. Lindsey was also a student at San Jose State University, where she planned to teach speech communication. But she dropped out of school to become a musician, and her dad was fine with it. In 1973, after Fritz's disbandment in 1972, Lindsey and I released Buckingham Nicks as a pair. Financial backing dwindled as a result. Stevie worked odd jobs like waiting tables and cleaning houses while Lindsey got over mononucleosis. It was informed to us that cocaine was recreational and not harmful, so we started using it. She stated later that it was just that. While thinking about how her relationship with Lindsey was crumbling, she wrote Rhiannon after seeing the name in a book and while listening to Landslide. After Mick Fleetwood heard their song, Frozen Love, in November 1974, he extended an invitation to Lindsey to join Fleetwood Mac. The only way for Lindsey to join was for Stevie to be able to, too. That was the deciding factor. Plus, Stevie's enchantment was only getting started. Everything changed when Belladonna lost. While Fleetwood Mac was in the height of its Tusk period in 1979 and 1980, Stevie Nicks began secretly working on her solo vision. Stevie needed a space where she could be herself without distractions so she could share her story. Okay then, to make it all happen, she co-founded Modern Records with Danny Goldberg and Paul Fishkin. Belladonna, her first solo effort, was an enormous hit upon its release on July 27, 1981. Its 4 singles reached the top of the Billboard Hot 100 and went straight to number 1 on the Billboard 200. She was even crowned the Queen of Rock and Roll by Rolling Stone. Stevie ought to have felt nothing but happiness. Reality, however, had different plans. Robin Anderson, Stevie's best friend, was stricken with leukemia on the same day that Belladonna became number 1. Even though she was expecting a child, Robin's time on Earth was limited. With Stevie in mind as godmother, she chose to name the newborn after him. Additionally, Stevie mentioned that she was unable to fully appreciate Belladonna due to her friend's terminal illness. Someone sent out a message that day. There was still something. Stevie made a tough decision after Robin passed away in 1982. After marrying Kim Anderson, Robin's spouse, she thought she could be expected to take care of the kid. She admitted that everyone was totally deranged due to the overwhelming pain they were experiencing. Just 3 months were the duration of the marriage. Regardless of the emotional storm, Stevie persisted in cultivating her single character. Belladonna also recruited Lori Perry and Sharon Salini two of her long-term backing singers. Currently known as Stevie Nicks, she wed Christopher, Stevie's brother. Their sound eventually became synonymous with Stevie's sound. The White-Winged Dove Tour was launched by Stevie later that year. Stevie's personal troubles, albeit she had to end it too soon so she could record Fleetwood Mac's upcoming album Mirage. Although it had nothing to do with her music or fame, that was a watershed moment in Stevie Nicks' life. Staying alive was the only concern. By the mid-1980s, Stevie's health was deteriorating due to her unchecked cocaine addiction. She went to a plastic surgeon to get some advice on her nose before the tour. Her heart sank at his reaction. "What do you think of my nose?" I inquired. This, she remembered in due course. He then warned that he could as well die the next time he took cocaine. That sentence hit her hard. Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix were two of her favorite musicians, and she had seen what happened to them. Somewhere in her mind, she was silently going through the same thing. She underwent a transformation, nevertheless. A portion of her wanted to go down with Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, she said later on, after seeing their demise. Another part of me wondered if, in 10 years, some 25-year-old female rock and roll artist would say, "I wish Stevie Nicks had thought about it a little more." That would make me sad. That's the thing that truly got me to pause and look at things clearly. After the tour ended in 1986, Stevie willingly spent 30 days at the Betty Ford Center. She came to the realization that she needed to clean up for the sake of herself and the others who held her in high esteem. We weren't so much concerned with restoring her reputation. Getting her life back under her control was the main idea. It wasn't easy to recover, though. People who were close to her continued to worry that she would relapse even after she stopped using cocaine. Following the advice of her friends, she made an appointment with a psychiatrist. With the introduction of Klonopin, a potent sedative meant to soothe her, her fight against addiction entered a new and potentially dangerous phase. The life of Stevie individually. Love, heartbreak, and deep emotional relationships are all parts of Stevie Nicks' life story, whether she's performing or not. Her love and musical connection with Lindsey Buckingham, which lasted from 1972 to 1976, is one of the most talked about parts of her life. Their passionate and stunning romance shaped their music and their life even though they never became a couple. In 1978, Stevie had a brief relationship with Mick Fleetwood, who was the drummer for Fleetwood Mac, adding another layer of complexity to the group's already fragile internal dynamics. She was also having an affair at the same time with Eagles drummer and singer Don Henley. Stevie had an abortion in 1979 after giving birth to a kid conceived by Henley. Their relationship had long-lasting effects. Another Eagles songwriter, J.D. Souther, was also briefly involved with her. Stevie dated Jimmy Iovine, who produced Belladonna, in the early 1980s. Jojo Walsh, guitarist for James Gang and the Eagles, was her boyfriend from 1983 to 1986. He was one of Stevie's biggest loves, she said years later. Sadly, though, the romance fizzled. The two of them had a deep bond, but they were unable to make things happen, according to Stevie. Since their way of life was different back then. She wrote, "Has anyone ever written anything for you?" while touring with Walsh in 1984, as a memorial to Walsh's deceased daughter. In 1983, Stevie tied the knot for the only time. Stevie wed Kim Anderson, Robin's widower, after her best friend Robin Anderson passed away from leukemia. She went on to say, "I don't know. I suppose we should just get married." This was because she was hell-bent on caring for Robin's baby. However, that plan backfired. It wasn't love that led to our marriage. We tied the knot while we were both grieving. Furthermore, it was an extremely disastrous error. Separation was finalized 3 months afterwards. She is still very close to her ex-stepson, with whom she reconnected and paid for his college education. She revealed in an interview from 2020 that his daughter, Robin, who was named after her mother who passed away, refers to her as Grandma Stevie. Stevie was never married and never had a family. She elaborated by saying that becoming a wife and mother probably wasn't her mission. "Perhaps it was my life's work to compose melodies that would uplift mothers and wives." Having said that, she just loves being with her loved ones. "My family is large. Anyhow, being the wacky aunt is more fun than being the mom." Almost daily, Stevie writes in her journal as well. "When I'm not around, I like to tell my niece, fairy goddaughters, and cousins that they can sit on the floor and read my writings. Those who read it will be able to feel the gardenia aroma and experience my life firsthand. They are free to decide for themselves who I was." Even though Stevie is writing a book, she says she would only write it honestly. "Talking about the negative aspects would never appear in my book. For the most part, I would savor the wonderful aspects, that there were a great deal of." Lindsey Buckingham alone. Morris H. Buckingham and Rafita Elliott welcomed their daughter Lindsay Adams into the world in Palo Alto, California on October 3, 1949. His dad was a football star at San Jose State College who later became president of the Alexander Bollert Coffee Roasting Company outside of Palo Alto. Californians continue to enjoy their Alta organic coffee. Jeffrey and Gregory were Lindsey's older brothers. Growing up in Atherton, a neighborhood in the San Francisco Bay Area, the Buckingham brothers were strongly encouraged to take swimming lessons. While Lindsey eventually gave up swimming to focus on his music career, Gregory, Lindsey's brother, earned silver in the 1968 Mexico City Olympics. Once upon a time, Lindsey had a little Mickey Mouse guitar. His parents spotted his skill and gifted him a $35 harmony guitar after he began playing along with his brother Jeff's 45S. Lindsey was a complete slacker who never even learned to read music. Lindsey developed a unique finger-picking style that incorporated banjo methods when she was 13 years old. She was deeply engrossed in folk music, especially that of the Kingston Trio. The Fritz Rabin Memorial Band, later abbreviated to Fritz, was Lindsey's high school psychedelic/folk music ensemble that performed on tour from 1966 to 1971. Lindsey was a singer and bassist. As a backing singer, he invited his friend Stevie Nicks to participate. Their love affair began 5 years after the band broke up. In the coffee plant that Lindsey's family owned in 1972, Buckingham and Nicks demonstrated a tape machine. The following year, in September of 1973, they had their album Buckingham Nicks released after being signed by Polydor Records. However, the record company let them go after the failure. To get by, Lindsey would perform Phil Everly's vocals while on the road with Don Everly's band. In 1975, things changed when Mick Fleetwood listened to Frozen Love and was captivated by Lindsey's guitar skills. After Bob Welch left Fleetwood Mac, Mick extended an offer to Lindsey to take over as guitarist. Lindsey was only willing to go if Stevie Nicks signed on as well. Mick consented, and this decision would change the course of music. When Fleetwood Mac released their self-titled album in 1975, it was an enormous hit. Monday Morning and I'm So Afraid, two songs written by Lindsey for a second Buckingham Nicks album, were included. Then in 1977, one of the best-selling albums of all time, Rumors, arrived. The songs Go Your Own Way, Secondhand News, and Never Going Back Again by Lindsey were greatly appreciated by her fans. Lindsey was not in the mood to play things safe after Rumors' triumph. On their 1979 album Tusk, he took the lead creatively and guided the band toward a more experimental sound. Before delivering his tunes at the studio, he would even produce them at home. Hits including Tusk, which featured the USC Trojan Marching Band, and Think About Me by Christine McVie, and Sarah by Stevie Nicks were also featured on the CD. The Private Life of Lindsey. Although Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks were classmates in high school, Stevie was a year older. Despite the fact that they were classmates at first, things improved between them following the breakup of their band, Fritz. That was the beginning of their love affair. In 1971, when they were finalizing plans to move to Los Angeles to pursue their musical dreams, Lindsey fell ill with mononucleosis, a terrible disease that put their ambitious plan on hold. After some time together, they settled in Los Angeles and recorded an album under the Buckingham Nicks moniker. The turning point for both of them came later in 1975 when they became part of Fleetwood Mac. But by 1977, their romance had ended, and nobody kept quiet about how devastated they were. It made its way into their songs. Silver Springs and Dreams were written by Stevie, while Go Your Own Way and Secondhand News were emotional cuts by Lindsey. The band's most classic songs were shaped by the pain and intensity of their lives. A different road was carved out for Lindsey's private life in later years. The day he became a dad was July 8, 1998. For the very first time to photographer and home designer Kristen Messner. 2 girls were born to him and Kristen after their 2000 marriage. They have built homes in the Brentwood region of Los Angeles and established a life there together. It all came to a head in 2021, and the couple filed for a divorce. They could have broken up, but they decided to stay together and figure things out. It was a heartbreaking yet stunning turn of events that proved love can triumph over adversity. The couple chose to get back together after filing for divorce in 2021, as reported. In February 2019, Lindsey underwent emergency open-heart surgery, which was a potentially life-threatening event for him. After that, his wife shared a worrisome report saying, "Thankfully, Lindsey got well. He kept on performing and distributing songs to the public despite the fact that the severity of his voice impairment is still unknown." In spite of everything that has happened to Lindsey Buckingham, heartbreaks, sicknesses, career highs, and lows, her tale is one of determination, passion, and the type of love that leaves an indelible mark on music history. The price of fame, treachery, and love. The breakup between Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham was just as shocking as their music itself. When they became members of Fleetwood Mac in 1975, they were still in a relationship. However, their relationship had already begun to crumble by the time they entered the studio in 1976 to record Rumors. Stevie continued by saying that the album's greatest tracks were inspired by their breakup, that she turned her grief into dreams and eventually into Silver Springs, and that Lindsey used Go Your Own Way and Secondhand News as retaliation. Their underlying animosity was so palpable that it was visible on stage. During concerts, according to the Los Angeles Times, they shot each other in the eye. The brief romance that Stevie had with drummer Mick Fleetwood in late 1977 further added to the drama. The thought scared Stevie, but admitted it nearly destroyed the band, as stated on Fleetwood Mac's wiki. The database of Fleetwood Mac confirms the short-lived relationship in order to avoid betrayal of the band. During this storm, Stevie dated Don Henley, drummer for the Eagles, for a short while as well, while guitarist Joe Walsh followed suit in the early 80s. She wrote, "Has anyone ever written anything for you?" in response to her feelings for Walsh. Unfortunately, there was a price to pay for fame. Excessive drug usage, late nights, and a relentlessly harsh spotlight were all byproducts of the emotional intensity that drove their music. They broke up, and it was all over the news. But the truth was that there was physical discomfort, emotional strain, and exhaustion. The wounds of tension and betrayal were too deep to be healed by the band's success. It was more than simply music. It was therapy, confession, and reckoning, as Rumors exploded onto one of the best-selling albums of all time. In the midst of creating an enduring masterpiece, the band was dissolving. Despite everything, Stevie and Lindsey managed to transform their raw emotions into art, creating an album that remains painfully honest and eerily human. Even now, the real-life tragedy and turmoil that went into creating Rumors' melodies are what make the songs so beloved. Getting back together as a band was terrible. Lindsey Buckingham's comeback for Fleetwood Mac's 1997 reunion tour, The Dance, gave the impression that the group was ready to put the past behind them. Almost electric with tension, their performance of Silver Springs on MTV was enchanting. They had flawless rehearsals, but once the cameras started running, we let it go deeper, Stevie said later. In the event that it was our final act together, I anticipated that we would bring it out. But under the surface, tensions remained high. That was before the 1980 Tusk tour, when Lindsey apparently had a violent outburst in front of the band. The backstory goes like this. While Stevie was performing in Auckland, New Zealand, Lindsey mimicked her every move, kicked her, and even threw his Les Paul guitar at her. Thankfully, she evaded it, and members of the band, the audience, and the backstage crew sprang into action to stop him. Claiming to have slapped and even spilled wine on him, Christine McVie lambasted him. The evening seemed otherworldly to Stevie. We had reached the final song. My Les Paul guitar was flung at me by Lindsey, so I dove. That was the one and only occasion we skipped the encore. According to Christine, she has never slapped anyone else. I may have even thrown down a glass of wine. After the fact, Lindsey admitted that he had sang off-key that night and joked that someone was considering sacking him and replacing him with Clapton. Despite this tumultuous history, the May 1997 dance record and tour were a smashing success. After debuting at #1 on the charts, the live album sold more than 6 million copies around the globe. The fact that Stevie and Lindsey were still exchanging tired looks and clearly harboring unresolved emotions during their winning MTV performance that year demonstrated just how blurry the boundary was between their music and their personal struggles. Next thing you know, Say You Will came out in 2003. Once again, tension was high along with creative sparks. Similar to the honest, passionate back and forth they had in the 70s, their songwriting sessions reflected that. Despite the best efforts of bandmates, deep scars do not heal with time. Sources have reported that fights resurfaced during recording. This is the last consequence. Lindsey Buckingham and Fleetwood Mac's relationship ended in April of 2018 when Buckingham formally announced his departure. His dismissal from the band was later reported in the news, nevertheless. Fans were taken aback by the split. However, upon closer inspection, the situation's drama had been building for a while. In 2021, Stevie Nicks shared her account of what happened. For Stevie's presentation at the Music Cares charity event in January 2018, Buckingham allegedly grinned and became visibly upset when Stevie's Rhiannon was played for the band entrance. After that terrible incident, which came after a very trying time with Lindsey, Stevie decided she'd had enough. I want to be quite clear, I did not order his dismissal. Took my own life. I proactively removed myself from the band and a situation I considered to be toxic to my well-being. She emphasized that this was about personal boundaries, not a power play. Meanwhile, on the other side, Buckingham stated that the tour conflicts were initially He had proposed postponing the North American tour to work on a new solo album, and when the band would not accommodate him, tensions arose. He said the smirk incident was just a minor phase, that the actual impetus was Stevie's him or me ultimatum, delivered via the manager. Buckingham was blindsided and devastated, stating he had no clue he'd be out of the band. Buckingham subsequently sued Fleetwood Mac for breach of contract, which they settled in December 2018. Despite the acrimony, he looked back on the band's legacy with nostalgia, deploring the fact that the split damaged the 43-year legacy that we had worked so hard to build. Mick Fleetwood later described, wasn't one thing. It was years of unresolved tension. He added that Stevie's exit was a response, not a power move, and that the band had made a tough but necessary decision. After everything they went through, love, heartbreak, fame, jealousy, and years of unforgettable music, Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham's story remains one of the most emotionally charged sagas in rock history. But beyond the drama and the headlines, it's also a story of two people who grew up, changed, and finally chose different kinds of peace. For Stevie, that peace meant finally putting herself first. She spent decades sacrificing pieces of her happiness to keep the band together, to stay creative, and to navigate personal pain in public. But at some point, she decided her own voice off stage mattered just as much as the one on it. And for Lindsey, it meant learning to let go, even when it hurt, even when the door closed without a proper goodbye. Though the wounds run deep, his love for the music they made, and maybe even for Stevie in some quiet way, still shines through. Their story doesn't have a neat ending. There's no final bow, no perfect closure, but maybe that's okay. Some connections are too big to fit into a neat little box. They shaped each other's lives in ways no one else ever could, and no matter how far apart they are now, that connection will always echo through the songs they made. Whether they ever reunite or not, Stevie and Lindsey's journey reminds us that healing looks different for everyone. Sometimes love means staying, and sometimes love means walking away for good. If you were as moved by Stevie and Lindsey's powerful, complicated journey as we were, make sure to give this video a thumbs up as it helps us keep bringing you more untold stories from the world of music. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a deep explorations into your favorite artists, iconic moments, and the behind-the-scenes drama that shaped music history. Until next time, stay tuned and stay curious.